What I think most people don't really know is the fact that even dairy cows are slaughtered when they can't give any more milk. And the fact that one serving of beef generates around 330 grams of carbon oxide emissions. And if you compare that with lentils, for example, that's only 2 grams carbon oxide emissions per serving. And of the total greenhouse emissions, livestock stands for 14%. And that's the same amount as the whole transport sector, that's also 14%. And that soy used for cow food often comes from South America, where rainforest is cut down to make place for agriculture. I wanted to make people aware of this with a critical design with juvenile and satire that should evoke contempt and shock and show the dark side of the meat industry, and that even dairy cows become meat. And I did this as a game where the player runs a dairy farm in good faith, but after a long time the player gets an in-your-face experience with the side effects of his or her actions. This lovely game, Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, I played it when I was younger and I really loved it, and I got some inspiration from this, of course, how you can create a game on a farm. So my design process, lots of ideation, of course. I started with a really big idea with too many mechanics and concepts in this idea, so I had to narrow it down, and I sketched and ideated. I used something that I call the promenade, which is simply just going for a walk when you can't really come up with any good ideas and you have to solve something. Then a walk is very good. I did a questionnaire to get important data. You will see more on that later. And I ideated even more on that, and I used many frameworks and articles and tried to concretize my idea. And I did some ideation, and I sketched, and I ideated even more. And then I did a prototype, and after the prototype I did a user test and some last improvements based on that user test. And some reflection at last. But let's move on. So this is my game. Welcome, congratulations to your new farm. You get to start with 1 cow in your farm, and you can name it. In this case we'll name it Rosa. You buy more cows, you buy more houses, you can develop your farm however you like. And the cows of course need food. They generate more milk if they get more food, if they are less hungry. And they also have a total amount of milk that they can produce, and then you just have to sell it if you can't generate more milk, because otherwise you will have to pay for that cow's food anyway, you know. And this is your food storage. You can drag the food to the cows to feed them. And in the shop you can buy new houses, you can buy food, you can buy new cows and farm items and everything, and it takes some time before these things actually come to your farm, because you place orders and then it takes maybe a few days for you to receive them. So that's some kind of strategy. Sometimes there come people to your farm, and that's companies that want to make deals with you, and that's how you can earn money in this game. And yeah, you continue playing and develop your farm, but suddenly, after 3 months after the game has been released, all players get this message: you have sent 132 cows to death and contributed to global warming. Oh, jeez. And then you get all these screens where information is presented: how many cows you have killed, how much meat that generates, how much carbon oxide that generates, and the emissions that corresponds to in terms of cars and flying and production of lentils and things like that. And then you get the message: are you sure you want to continue this? And then you get different screens depending on what you answer. So this is a critical design, and Marpla says that there should be a narrative in a critical design. And in my case, that's a farm is built up, the player kind of works on the farm, and there's a sudden transition into the resource of the environmental effects. And there's not really much text in the narrative before the final revelation. So it's not explicitly narrated through the game to keep the player think that he or she is doing something good. But just a small clue: as you saw, the climate gets a bit warmer the more cows the player sends to the slaughterhouse. Not as much grass would grow, so instead you have to buy food for the cows, for them to generate milk and so. I work with Rich Emotions, of course. For Kingus, Rich Emotions, I worked with the grotesque, which is a combination of disgust and fascination. Disgust could either be physical or moral, and in my case I think it could be a combination of both. The physical is that I could show images of cows being slaughtered, and the moral would be showing numbers of the outcome of the things players done in the game in terms of environmental effects. And the fascination is, of course, how the industry affects the environment. And you have to have a protective frame, and I choose the detachment frame, and that means in my case that the user is only interacting with a digital representation. They are not really killing cows, and so making them feel a bit safer. And I avoided showing a real photo of slaughtered cows, but instead chose to display this dead cow in cartoon style, as you can see here, to keep it more into the detachment frame. But I have to know what makes people go vegan or vegetarian. Or do most people feel sorry for the animals, or do they care about the environmental effects? So I did this questionnaire where I asked people on Facebook. First a question about if the person was vegan or vegetarian or a meat eater, and then different follow-up questions depending on that answer. And lastly, final questions for all people about the topic and the industry. And I will not go through all of the answers, but I got 86 people responding on this. But you can see that the environmental effect seems to be the most intriguing one, since 35 persons mentioned it, and that's much more than anything else. But if people really know this, why don't they become vegans and vegetarians? Well, I think most people don't know how big the impact is, and that is why I'm trying to convince them with statistics on this. I need to change behavior, so I work with the FOG paper. And changing behavior is easier if there is a motivator, a simplicity factor, and a trigger. And in my case, the motivator would be hope and fear, as FOG calls it. And this could easily be reached by me by displaying the effects of the industry. And I don't really have a simplicity factor, and that's really hard for me to incorporate in this game, but I will talk more about that later. And a trigger would be a signal. Displaying effects could serve as a signal for behavior change. But of course I have to make the game fun, since they must play it for at least 3 months, you know. So I worked with exploring aesthetic ideals of gameplay, and I worked with 12 of the 17 proposed gameplay properties in this paper. And I worked with simplicity, use of chance, tempting challenge, meaningful choice, varying strategies, game balance, minimal exercise, integrated theme, accurate simulation, gamer interaction, skill, and limited playtime. I would love to go through them all and say exactly what came from what, but I don't have time for that, unfortunately. But when I summed all these outcomes and came up with a more concrete game idea than I had before, and that's the game you just saw. And I also work with pottering, since I thought that was probably the easiest way for me to keep the players continue playing the game and make it fun. And I work with construction and neutering and value of effort, since I thought those were easy to integrate in a natural way. Like letting the players construct the farm, take care of the cows, and get rewarded from selling milk by earning money, and from that money be able to buy more things to reconstruct the farm, you know. And I think all this makes the players more emotionally attached to the game and your farm. And that would create an even bigger shock in the end, I think. And also, players need to come back, and Gouveia talks about 2 different methods for keeping players coming back. And that's creating checking habits and transitioning glances to moments for reflection engagement. I think the situation is a bit different in a game. I think a fun game creates the habits, but if we look at Gouveia's here, I think a leaderboard is something that could create a checking habit, so I integrated a leaderboard where you can compare with your Facebook friends and people in your region and worldwide also. There are some similar designs. Farmwell is one of them. It shares a concept with farming and pottering with this game. And Train, a game where the player runs a train, and in the end it's revealed that the train goes to Auschwitz and nobody wins. Yeah, this game shares the concept with the players playing in good faith until the end where the bad things are revealed. I did a user test to see if people reacted in the way I wanted. So I showed a scenario to them and asked them about opinions. And all 5 test persons in the user test were very positive towards the design. And several pointed out the game looked fun and nice and addicting, and the revelation in the end was very clear. And one person said that since it's your farm, your revelation in the end becomes more dramatic and it's easier to assimilate. And one person said that he knew that meat was bad for the environment, but the game raised awareness of the dairy industry, which he didn't know as much about. You can say that the test persons actually confirmed what I wanted to hear, without me in any way leading the discussion or saying what I wanted to hear. So that was very good, I think. I think that if I would release this, people would hopefully see it as a fun game, and that they would enjoy playing it in good faith. The revelation is, in my opinion, very clear, since the idea is that all people around the world will see the revelation at the same time. People will hopefully start discussing this with their friends and at the job and in school and things like that, in making it a big topic at that time. Unfortunately, it seems like the user test confirms this to me. Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. If I do some final reflections on this, it's very hard to find exact numbers and statistics on this topic, because it differs dramatically between different sources. And I could be totally wrong in my calculations, I don't know. But no matter what numbers are correct, all sources that I've seen at least agree that the meat industry is bad for the environment, even though it's very hard to find exact numbers, and that differs from different places in the world and so. So if I would release this, I would need to work with an expert on the topic and see what numbers I can trust, really. And as you know, the game ends with the emission results of the player's farm, but maybe I should also give suggestions on how people could change their meals to make them more environment friendly, or let them continue running a vegan farming in the game or something. And of course I could have worked more with literature regarding behavior change, since now I don't really have a clear simplicity factor, as I mentioned before, just a motivator and something that could be seen partly as a trigger. But I think if we combine these 2 last bullet points here, that could actually be a thing. The simplicity factor could be if I show recipes or something that make people more environmental friendly, that would be better for behavior change. One bad thing with this revelation is that if you know nothing about how things affect the environment, like cars and flights and things, those numbers don't really say that much. But I think most people know at least a little about this. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how the project turned out. I personally believe that I've reached my design goals, and I think I would enjoy playing it. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through everything I thought of. This was like 20% of everything. But I hope you got the most interesting points at least. Thank you.
Moo.